Welcome, everyone. We are FreeSpirit Fabrics here. We are Thursday, April 13th, and we have an exciting presentation for you today. We are here to talk about the Queen of Diamonds Block of the Month again. Christy Smith is with me. I'm Sharon Thornton. We are here in the Charlotte, North Carolina office, and we're panning over the Queen of Diamonds quilt right now so that you guys can see it up close and personal. We're excited because we have Karen Miller with us here today. She's from Aurifil Threads and she's a master educator. I personally am quite excited about today's presentation, and I know that all of you will be too as Karen goes through the presentation. But before we get to Karen, I'd like to just remind everybody about the Queen of Diamonds Block of the Month. This is an EPP project, which is English paper piecing. All these blocks, as Christy's showing you, these are all sewn by hand. Karen and I will talk about potentially another way that this could be done, but this quilt and the quilt that is also behind Karen is the Queen of Diamonds quilt. These have been sewn by hand. So these are all EPP projects sewn by hand. The quilt is 60 inches by 73 inches as the kit comes out of the box. This is an intermediate project, and this quilt, which is it's an impressive quilt with 91 fabrics in it. So I don't know about you guys, but gathering 91 fabrics is no easy feat. And then to put them all together as nicely as this has been done by Pink Door Fabrics. So this quilt is designed by Pink Door Fabrics, which consists of Chelsea O'Hare, Sandra Smith, Dina Melling, and Lisa Hawkins. They worked on this quilt last year. It was, a monster in the making. They just did a, wonderful job. Like I said, 91 fabrics, and this makes sense. 91 fabrics don't always make sense. It does here. The fabrics in this quilt are all Tula Pink fabrics. It is Everglow, Moon Garden, Daydreamer, Tiny Beasts, Curiouser and Curiouser, True Colors, and Tula Pink solids. And I don't want to forget that what Christy's showing you is the quilting on this quilt. This quilting is just as amazing as the EPP work. And this was quilted by Teresa Silver of Quilting is My Bliss. So the quilt that we're showing you here was made by Pink Door Fabrics and quilted by Teresa Silva. And the one that is behind Karen, it's the same quilt. We have two of them, also made by the same team of women who, put both these quilts together. The individual blocks are EPP'd on this quilt, and the sashing is at the borders in here, and the sashing here is all sewn by machine. So the blocks all in here is EPP. All up here, I don't know if Christy can get me, each block EPP, but again, the sashing and the borders are sewn on by machine. So, it's a great relief for those of you that, don't want to do all EPP. You have a little bit of both. And I think that that's also what makes this quilt very unique in its presentation, because a lot of times when there's an EPP project, it is strictly EPP. And I just think that this is unique. And like I've already said, very nicely done by Chelsea and her team to have both methods in the quilt. The fabric delivers in 4 installments. It starts to deliver in May of 2023, blocks 1 through 3 with the instruction booklet. And actually, Christy, I should probably show that. Here, let me think. I'm going to kind of get here. Christy's going to focus on the instructions. So here's the instruction booklet. Very nicely done. Again, Chelsea and her team put this together. You see the layout of the quilt. You see all the individual blocks here. So up close, all these these blocks are all in here. Here's your sashing. And she gives you supplies, recommended supplies. And then what is also very nice about this is, can you see this okay? Am I doing all right? All of the fabrics are called out. So when you get your fabrics and you open your packet, we don't identify it on each piece of fabric, but it's very clear here which fabric is used for which, which piece. You can see all the pieces here. You can see the fabrics here, and they're identified by name and design number and how much is used of those pieces. So very in-depth booklet, very nicely done here. I'm going to scan through it quickly here so you can get a close-up of this. And, you know, very detailed, very on point. You shouldn't have a lot of questions, but if you do, the good news is there will be videos. So there will be EPP videos by, so now I'm on, right? You're seeing me. All right. So welcome. We're glad you're all here. I'm Sharon. We would have EPP videos for this. Chelsea and her team are doing videos for this. There will be a Facebook page, and that page opened, I believe, last week. So sign into that. You know, look for the Facebook sign in to get into the group. Chelsea will have videos, and Tula will also be sewing along once this starts to deliver. And she will be doing Tula Tuesdays, and she will be showing you her progress as she works through this quilt as well. So I did see one of the videos that Chelsea's done so far. Very, very nicely done. She did a great job. She's walking you through the cutting, you know, the papers, everything. I'm sure Tula will do the same. It's going, we're giving you everything we possibly can to make this very successful for you. So we're excited about it, and it's coming soon. The only other thing that you need to know is that when you receive the kit, so here's an example of one delivery. Oh, these are all bagged up. Sorry, this is better than it is. So you're going to get your instruction booklet and all your fabrics, and this is month 1. So in month 1 bag, you're going to get all of these fabrics, and then you'll follow along in the booklet like we already showed to make the quilt. And the only additional purchase you need to make are the paper piece templates, and you get those from Paper Pieces. We had Jess on a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about the paper pieces and the acrylics. The acrylics are optional. That's not something you need, but it would certainly make the project easier. So just wanted to give you all that information as it relates to this. I think I have covered everything. It starts to deliver in May, and it starts in June. So that's that. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to switch the camera over to Karen. So Karen, hold on one second because you're going to be on camera.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let me see. So Karen, here you are. So
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today. And I just want to let everyone know that Karen Miller is the Master Educator for Aurifil Threads, and she is here to share with us tips and tricks about threads and about how to use them for this project, and maybe, you know, some of the machine sewing as well. And Karen, I'm going to let you take it away from here now. And okay. I'm excited to hear, because we always think that we know everything, and we're always surprised when we don't.
Aw, thank you so much, Sharon, for having Aurifil on, and I'm excited to be here to represent them as the Master Educator. It's always a thrill to share our passion for thread and for quilting with everyone. I've put together a few slides today, but let me just say before I even get into that, we have some great slides. We have a lot of inspiration in this quilt that's behind me. I'm so excited about it. Aurifil is so excited about it. This quilt arrived at my home this week, and I was just head over heels. Every single block is amazing. I tried to put my neon on today, Sharon, so that I could be bright and colorful, but I'm afraid I cannot stand up to the color of this beautiful quilt, but I tried really hard to do so. So it's a lot of fun.
You did a great job, Karen. Your top's beautiful. I love the intricate work around your neckline.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'll store bought, but hey, anyhow, the quilt is absolutely fabulous. And all the things that go along with the quilt, I've been involved in all of the lives you've been doing. Everyone's doing such a fabulous job. Chelsea and her team, Jess at Paper Pieces. I mean, Aurifil is just wildly excited about the whole program. So thank you so much for us being a part of it. I'm going to jump into a couple of slides. Let's see if we're going to be able to see them.
Yes.
You know, let's give this a whirl. Everyone's going to kind of roll with us on this, right?
I think we can see that, Karen.
Yay. All right, fantastic.
We can.
Yay. that's great news. Okay, our screen share is working. Just a few minor things. I mean, I just wanted to cover some fun things about this. First, let me start out by saying that Aurifil this year is 40 years strong. So we're celebrating Aurifil's 40-year anniversary. And Aurifil started 40 years ago after having already prepared thread for high-speed embroidery machines and using their original 40-weight 2-ply thread for high-speed embroidery machines, they adopted their thread to become a quilting hit. And as we all know, it really, really is. And Tula is like one of them, such a huge proponent, and we widely celebrate her creativity. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more going on. But I just wanted to say happy anniversary, Aurifil. We're so happy that you're still here and going strong. Aurifil is based out of Milano, Italy, and it's a family-owned company. There's so many companies today that aren't. I kind of celebrate that with them. The thread that I'm going to talk about today, for the most part, is 100% Egyptian cotton thread. It's grown along the River Nile in the Mako region of Egypt. And this is where we have just the right humidity and climate and sun and rain and everything we need to have beautiful Egyptian cotton harvested and used for all of the Aurifil threads. Aurifil goes through a 15-step production process. And if any of your viewers, Sharon, have tuned into any of our Aura Philosophy programs, it's a guild program and a shop program that Aurifil offers. They'll see all of those steps in detail and try to understand why those steps set Aurifil aside from some other threads that are on the market, or what makes Aurifil's quality the highest. We love that you always get brilliant results when you're using Aurifil thread. So it's a lot to celebrate. We're very thrilled about it. One of the things I want to mention is that another thing that sets Aurifil aside a little bit, and most people may not be aware of this, is that most of Aurifil threads are 2-ply threads. They're 2 strands twisted together, where a lot of the other threads on the market have an additional strand in them. So they're 3-ply. Kind of like when we're purchasing yarn, we can see the different plies that are in the yarns. With thread, you can't see that. But one might wonder why Aurifil 50-weight thread seems a little bit more fine than other 50-weight threads on the market. It's because Aurifil threads are only 2-ply for the most part. So keep that in mind when you're selecting a cotton thread to do your block of the month with, because that one less ply makes a world of difference for having your thread disappear into the background of your fabric. So just some fun tidbits there. I just want to really quickly go over the fact that Aurifil color codes their thread weights. So what I'm showing you on the screen right now are all the 2-ply threads. You can see from the red all the way over to the wooden spool. The 12 weight is the thickest thread, and then we get thinner and thinner and thinner as we go the other direction to the 80 weight thread, which only comes on that tiny little wooden spool. What we're going to talk about mostly today, though, is that great orange spool. It's Tula's favorite. We love the way it gets applied on the Queen of Diamonds block of the month. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. But I wanted to let you know that there are 5 other 2-ply threads that Aurifil makes. And if you tune into the Aurabuzz blog, there's so many great posts about the different Aurifil thread weights and how to use them in your creations today. I know you'll be thrilled to check that out. So do tune into, if you go to aurifil.com and you go to just look for the Aurabuzz blog there, and you'll find a wealth of information out there. The other than 2-ply threads, just quickly, is there are other than 2-ply threads that Aurifil makes. They also make a wool thread that's it's 12 weight, so it's on that red cone, or red spool that you're seeing. The wool thread is half acrylic and half wool. It works beautifully for hand embroidery and things like that. There's also a 6-strand divisible floss. It's on a wooden spool. We call it Aura Floss. In addition, a few years ago, Aurifil made a 40-weight 3-ply thread. They added one more strand in there for 40-weight 3-ply that it only comes delivered on a cone, and it runs wonderfully for long arm machines or high-speed machines. It just works beautifully in multiple different directions under a lot of stitches. per minute, and it's a lovely, lovely thread. So Aurifil 43, we refer to it often as. And then one other thing before we move on is the Aurifil monofilament, which is a nylon monofilament, comes in clear and smoke. It's a great little thing to have in your toolkit for when you want to do some invisible, really invisible work. So I love the monofilament. I'm going to just move forward one more slide here and talk to you about this cute little trick that not a lot of people maybe are aware of. On the Aurifil large spools of thread, I'm showing you a 50 weight spool here. That's orange. On the large spools of thread, that bottom flange comes off. You can actually remove it. And when you remove it, you're going to find the beginning of your thread spool under there. You're going to find the beginning of the thread there. Let me just pause for a second if I can. I'm going to stop this share. We're going to keep our fingers crossed, Sharon, so I can share this extra little tip here. I'm going to just grab one of the neons out really quickly, and maybe I'll switch to my overhead camera. Let's do that. We're living all wild and crazy here today, so let's see if this is going to work well too.
It does.
Did that work?
Yes, it does.
Okay, this is the tool neon, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here in the future. But what I want to show you on the way that flange comes off is look how beautiful these are. Wow. I mean, first we have to ooh and ah and drool over these. These are so fresh, aren't they? Those
are wonderful.
Yes, I'm going to pick the one that matches my shirt the most right now.
Okay, that's fair.
I want to show you about this flange because it's something that people don't often get. The flange just twists off. There's no quote threads on the plastic, but if you just grip that end and just twist it ever so slightly, you'll see that it comes off just like that.
Wow, Karen.
The beginning of your thread spool, right?
Years of use, and I never knew this.
Oh my goodness. That crazy or what? But that's where you're always going to, on these large spools of thread, this is where you're going to find the beginning. A couple of things I want to point out though, when you put the flange back on, leave a tiny little airspace there. You see that tiny little airspace?
Mm-hmm.
I love to encourage people to leave that little airspace there because if you put it on too tight, it sometimes restricts the thread coming off the bottom of the spool. So just something to consider when you're putting the flange back on. Another thing to think about is when you're gripping the top of the thread to take the flange off, make sure you try not to roll the thread over the top. That happens sometimes as well. So just grip it firmly and only twist down here so that we're not, oh, there's a piece of lint there. That's not allowed. So that we're not rolling the thread off the top. So wasn't that a nifty little trick? I'm just going to go on. Good. I hope that's helpful for folks.
Yes. Well, it's helpful to Sharon.
Yeah. Maybe in the chat box, they want to say if they knew that or not. I love to think that people actually already knew it, but maybe.
Right. Well, so if you didn't already know that tip, let us know that you did or you didn't, because we'd like to know, and send us some hearts and some thumbs up as we move through this of things that Karen's telling you that you love. If I could give you a love right now, it would be for that little tip.
Okay. I can feel the pitter patter. Awesome. Let me jump back to those slides real quick, because sometimes I start yapping and I kind of lose my way. So we'll just see if we can stay on track.
Yes, I get it.
All right, there we go. All right, so that was our tip of the day with the end of the flange coming off to find your thread spool. Aurifil also celebrates, let's celebrate Tula. I mean, how can we not celebrate this woman? This year, 2023, is her 10th anniversary of designing thread collections with Aurifil thread. She is such an inspiration to so many people. We love the details she offers. We love her fabrics and her creations. Everything she's done with Aurifil is just so amazing. We're of course celebrating the neons this year, right? Tula's 3 new exclusive colors that are just exclusive to her, the neon colors that I just showed you a second ago. And there's also 3, altogether 3 neon collections. There's this 3 spool collection, a 20 spool collection, and then a 12 spool large collection. And I have there's just little images of each of those out there. So let me just move forward and show you the neon. Of course, this is what I just showed you live on the overhead. Aren't they amazing though?
They are.
And these colors are included in all of the 3 different ways that the neons are packaged. There's a neons and neutrals, just neons, and the 2 different neons and neutral options out there. So we just love these colors. As a free motion quilter, free motion quilting is kind of my thing. I love the fact that I can put these on like a black background or a nice white background or a beige background, and they just show up beautifully. So this is just going to be a huge hit with everyone. We're wildly excited about it. This is
Karen,
one. Yeah.
Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you could just pop back to the neons, I just wanted to say that for the makers that are, making this Queen of Diamonds, that Chelsea, who, I already mentioned, made this quilt, Aurifil was kind enough to send her these threads, and she had said that these neon threads were like perfect when she was doing the handwork. Like the stitches just melted right into the fabrics. So, if you're that type of a maker, please look for these threads. You will probably be completely satisfied. And Karen, did these start shipping in April?
April, yeah, that's a great question.
Oh, okay.
I feel like that, right?
I feel like they ship in April. I think I had asked that question.
Yeah,
and I think that Erin had said they start shipping in April. So
yeah, okay, great. Yes, that's good. And Erin, I think, is out there floating around on Facebook, hoping to recover from anything that I may say incorrectly. So okay. Yeah, April or May, these are out. I know that they're in now, and I'm assuming that they're shipping. So let's make it April. Everyone's going to be thrilled when they receive what they got. Be sure to dart to your local quilt shop to be able to get your hands on these.
Right.
If you haven't already reserved them with your local quilt shop, give them a ring and let them know that you want them, because they're just so beautiful. We can't live without them. And as we progress, I'm going to talk a little bit about some hand stitching tips, Sharon.
Okay.
And I'll hold up a couple of the threads over here to the quilt behind me. And so maybe we can kind of guide a little bit on choices in that way. So
that sounds great.
Yep. Yeah, great. So this is the second collection, or I don't know if there's a particular order, but this is the Neon and Neutrals 20 small spool collection. And I think I want this collection not only because of the thread, but because of the beautiful artwork that's on the packaging. Mm-hmm. And speaking of which, we have a great giveaway for you at the end of the program today. I'm just going to sneak that in there.
Yes, I forgot to say something about that. Thank you, Karen.
No problem. We get to share that more. We'll get to share that along the way, because we want everybody to stay to be eligible for that giveaway, right?
That's right. That's right.
Here's the packaging now that's inside of the lovely cover. These two packages then are inside of the 20 spool collection box. And then as I progress down the line here, these are the actual quilts, the actual colors that are inside of each packaging. So there's 20 small spools of Aurifil 50 weight thread. It's a 2-ply thread, as I mentioned earlier. And as Sharon mentioned, when you stitch with this 2-ply thread, it just melts into your fabric. I use it for needle turn applique. Everyone loves it for English paper piecing. It's also fabulous for quilting, dense machine quilting. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thread weight. So this is the 20 spool collection called Neons and Neutrals. And then here is our favorite, everyone's favorite 12 large spool collection of Neons and Neutrals. And I know that Tula, chose these colors to go along with the Queen of Diamonds, so that all the neutral colors and the neons actually go well with what the fabrics that are used in the Queen of Diamonds. So we're very, very excited about that. But this is a 12 spool collection. It's just fabulous. Everybody has to have it to have a hold of those neons before they disappear. Yeah. Let me move forward a little bit. Any questions there, Sharon? Otherwise, I'll jump into some hand stitching tips. We're good?
Yeah, no, we have no questions yet. Just lots of hearts and oohs and ahs.
Oh my gosh, I can, the oohs and ahs, I completely understand. Let's talk a few hand stitching tips. It's funny that every creator, every maker has their own style, but I think that generally Aurifil feels, and we recommend a few common things when it comes to hand stitching. And this is regardless of whether you're doing English paper piecing or needle turn applique, or maybe you're hand piecing a quilt. I'm going to praise everyone that does that, because that's absolutely wild to hand piece a quilt, but there are so many people that are so good at it. These things to consider. Thread the needle from the spool. And what I mean by that is the knot that's already cut on your spool, the knot, the end of the thread that's already open to you, that's the end that you should thread your needle with. And the reason behind that is because thread actually has a nap. there's a nap to the thread. So that means the thread fibers are all going in a certain direction. And if you thread that first end, that very first end that you have already available to you on your needle, and you cut the end that's attached to the spool, you'll be working with the nap of the thread. When I took a close look at the Queen of Diamonds quilt, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, these stitchers, the ones that are going to do this by hand, are definitely the ones that need to be working with the nap of the thread, because the last thing you want to do is give yourself an extra workout, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's really important to thread the needle from the spool, the end that's already available to you, and then knot the last end cut. There's a lot of different ways to knot, and I think I'll go through a little demo for that before we're off of this slide, Sharon.
Okay.
Also consider using a shorter, I don't want to say shorter length, but not a long length of thread. A couple of reasons behind that. And personally, I usually do like the length of my forearm is what I do for my lengths of thread. I do a lot of hand stitching needle turn applique, which is the one hand work that I absolutely adore. And what I find is if you cut your lengths too long, your thread gets tired after it being stitched over and over and over and over, getting pulled through your fabric. I think I've heard Tula say in the past before too, think about when you're English paper piecing that you're not only going through 2 layers of thread, but you may be scratching that thread against a piece of paper as well. Right? So the shorter lengths of thread means that you're going to have less wear and tear on your thread as you go across the edge of your EPP work. And you're kind of preserving it for its job. I also love that when Tula is stitching, she usually does several knots right at each corner. Every place where you first start stitching your 2 English paper pieces together. I love that. So she's got a lot of great tips out there for making sure that you maintain the strength of your thread. And that's using short lengths is one of them. The other thing that can happen if you use longer lengths is it's more likely that your thread will knot or twist. Those things can happen when you use the longer lengths as well. So short lengths is a really good tip to keep in mind. The other thing then also is finding the right size needle for the thread that you're using. With the Aurifil 50 weight thread, there's a lot of the needle is such a personal thing, but I know that Tula loves to use the tulip applique needles, and I've used the Jenna Kimball foxglove needles before, but I think every handwork person kind of finds needles that are the right length for their dexterity and maybe for their fingers, right? And so there's a lot. So don't be afraid to try different needles. I would say I would warn against having the eye too large, because if the thread is moving back and forth in the eye a lot, that can also be detrimental to the thread over time. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Let me stop this share and show you just a quick thing on the knotting, how I mentioned to knot the last end cut. And back. You know what, Sharon, I'm going to switch you over to this other camera again. Let me do that.
Okay.
Sideways to see my choices here. Ooh,
look at you.
Imposing on our world here. Hold on a second. Can you wait 1 second? Let me.
Yeah, sure.
Get rid of that sun. Tell me if it goes away. Which I don't know.
I will.
Let's see. Is this going to do it?
Yes, that did it.
Yay. We are not going to complain about the sun here in the Northeast, though, right?
Neither are we. We've had a lot of rain.
We have had a lot of rain. Before I flip over to that knotting expedition that we're going to do, let me show you again the beautiful neons and neutrals packaging. This is the lovely box that it comes in on the outside. Slides right over top of these 2 small spool collections. And then in the small spool collections, look at that beautiful just the beautiful creations that Tula has made. And when you pop these open, you see all the lovely threads inside. Oh, they should be arranged perfectly because I have a thing about that. But aren't they beautiful?
They are beautiful.
Right? I think it's because I used to be a programmer probably or something like that. Aren't they lovely? So
they look wonderful.
I'm very thrilled about them. Let me grab just this needle and thread real quick, because I was thinking the other day, sometimes when people are doing hand stitching, they may not always be in tune with, or maybe they're just learning to hand stitch. So let me just show you a couple. There's one little knot here. That's my favorite knot. And I think the reason why it's my favorite is because I can do it without a lot of trouble. So I have just a kind of a straw or a milliner needle here, and I'm not sure we're going to see it. I put this darker background down in hopes that people could see it on screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, great. And I have Aurifil 50 weight thread, which is again a 2-ply thread. It's very fine. So I have that on here. When I do my quilter's knot, whether I'm doing embroidery thread, like a heavyweight 12 weight thread, or if I'm doing this fine 50 weight thread, I usually hold the needle in my dominant hand. I pull the needle tightly. I take the very end of the thread. I'm going to go all the way to the end of this thread, as long as my forearm. I'm going to lay the end of the thread over the needle, grasp it with my thumb, swing around here 2 or 3 times, just like that. Now I'm going to grab the whole mess with my thumb and just pull the needle out.
It's almost like doing a French knot.
Oh, is that considered a French knot?
Well, that's the way I do it. That's how other people do it.
Isn't that great? So I guess, we'll call it that. I've always called it a quilter's knot. I don't know why, but that's what I've always kind of referred to it as, a quilter's knot. But so again, those that haven't done it before, hold the needle in your prominent hand, slide the other hand all the way down the thread to the end of the thread. Whoops, hold on. Okay, there's the end of the thread, the one you just cut from the spool. Yeah. You're going to lay it over top of the needle, pinch it, wrap around however big you want your knot to be. If you don't want your knot to be too large, then don't wrap it as many times.
Right. Yeah.
Pinch it and then just gently pull.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's it.
So Karen, you'll be happy to know that I have been pulling my thread off the spool properly to thread a needle.
I am very happy to know.
Yes, that I have done correctly. And so that length of thread that you just showed, is that approximately from like your elbow to your hand, as you suggested before?
Yeah, that would be perfect. I think that would be just right. So, when let me get my camera spacing right here. So yeah, just kind of the forearm. You could go from the wrist down to your elbow, or you could do the whole length, but just don't overdo it. That's the main thing. You don't want so much thread that you're going to get knotting and twisting. I think also, Sharon, that knotting the last end cut, having the nap of the thread working with you rather than against you helps tremendously with less twists and less, kind of having it get knotted up on you while you're stitching.
Right.
So,
that's a great tip. I'm glad you shared it with us. And I love the knot as well. I mean, I only said a French knot because like when I've done embroidery, that's the type of way that I would do it, to make a French knot in embroidery, but it's perfect. Quilter's knot, or, the technique is very similar, if not the same. So that's awesome.
And what I like is that I don't have to like twist it in my fingers. I don't have to twist the thread. And so I always looked at a quilter's knot, especially for like wool applique or things like where you're doing handwork with a thicker weight thread. Like I'm not putting additional twists in the thread, which is really good. I think I have a slide here that talks about taking the spool off the thread off the top of the spool too. I'm going to get to that. Let me just go back to this slideshow. And I think that's coming right up. Oh, yes, we're talking about selecting color. Okay, so during the selecting color discussion, we're going to unwind the thread from the spool. Well, that's a really insightful tip, isn't it? It should say from the top of the spool. So when you're here, let me flip back and show you why. But first, when in doubt, choose a lighter color. And let me flip back to the other camera and just tell you why real quick. Am I back? I think I'm back. So with most Aurifil, actually most modern day thread spools are what we call cross wound. When you look at the thread, you can actually see like an X in the spool itself, right? So these cross wound spools love to be drawn when let me get the one that's already open. They love to be pulled over the top of the spool. So they want to go straight up over. Right. If the thread is mounted horizontally on your machine, then they want to be pulled this way off when they're mounted horizontally. Okay. Now, what that does is it keeps things in line with the twist, the number of twists that are in there. This thread expects to be twisted almost that one extra time when it's coming off the spool. If you pull it off sideways, that spool is not getting twisted. That thread is not getting twisted again. And
Right.
that is the way you would kind of do it with what we call a straight wound or a stacked thread spool. But the Aurifil, any cross wound spool loves to have the thread come straight off the top. If you're going vertically straight up, horizontally straight off the side. And another one of my pet peeves, I have to say this because it's something.
We like to hear it. We want to know.
When you have this thread mounted for machine work, and you have it in your horizontal holder this way, be sure that the cap you use is just the same size as the spool itself, as the orange part. Because what happens a lot, I see a lot, is that people put this big old spool cap on here, and that means the spool cap, the thread is running over that spool cap every time it comes off the thread, off the spool. And you never know when there might be like a burr or a mark or just a little bit of a rough part to that cap. So it's important to kind of just keep the integration. Your thread only wants to touch thread guides when you're taking it off your machine. So make sure you keep that. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Well, it's funny that you talked about that because I was going to ask you about that. Because when you turn the spool like that, I think about my own sewing in the machine, and that's exactly how I position it. Now I'm going to go home and pay attention to what size cap I have on there. I think it's small enough, but I'm going to double check tonight.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. Most thread manufacturers or machine manufacturers make a spool cap that's small. It sometimes can get lost in your little kit, your little goodie kit, because it's so small. It literally is just kind of this diameter here, and it gets lost a lot. And sometimes we just don't think about those types of things. Right. It just doesn't, we don't think about it. And while we're on machine stitching though, let me just mention the other kind of really awesome thing you can do for your sewing today or tomorrow or the next day is make sure you start with a brand new needle in your machine every time that you're starting. Right? Yes. Needles are what I love to say, they're the best $1.25 investment we can make in our machine sewing, whatever we're doing. For $1.25, you can't get much these days. Right. So, to throw a new needle in your machine and know that it's sharp and straight and ready to accept that thread and make a perfect stitch for you. I think a lot of times we see folks having a hard time with that, and it's really just the needle. So think about that too. It's another little thread tip for today.
I really like that because I know that personally when I'm having difficulty, I usually just clip everything, like I clip the thread, pull it through, and then I'm usually rethreading and I put in a new needle, and usually both or one of them solves the problem. So that's my own little method of, clearing up the frustration while I'm sewing.
Right. We are going to make you the poster child of all the proper techniques today.
Oh, good. I'm
You're
glad.
already doing them all. So this is really exciting. Thank you for that. Let me go back and see. Oh, I know. Before I go back to the slideshow, the other thing I wanted to say was colors, about color selection, especially for your English paper piecing, because it makes such a big difference. You want your stitches to not show for needle turn applique, for English paper piecing. So one of the reasons why I love the neons and neutrals is because all the colors that were selected work perfectly for what you have to do on this quilt. I mean, for example, this lovely color, this is 2420 in this neons and neutrals. This is perfect for a couple of blocks. If you hold your thread up, when my first bullet was take the thread off the spool, you're going to take the thread off the spool in order to lay it against your fabric. To see how it looks. Oftentimes, if we just lay the spool up here, it's, you can't really tell for sure, especially when it comes to darker colors. So you unwind a little bit from the spool, lay it against your fabric choices, and you're going to then find what looks the best. And I think in general, for applique or for English paper piecing, generally folks tend to lean toward the lighter color. You can rest assured that the 50 weight thread, the 2-ply 50 weight thread, is just going to melt into your fabric. So it's nice to know that you won't see any little dots of this color on your lighter fabric. And if you have a darker fabric against this, then it will just melt inside of there as well. So I think everyone's going to be wildly happy with the way that works out. But definitely unwinding the thread from the spool and holding it up there will work wonders for you to select which one of the neons and neutrals you want to use. And maybe Chelsea and Tula are already going to make those suggestions for which color they chose each one of the
they probably will along the way for sure.
Good, awesome, that'd be great. Let me just think, I think I just have one or two more things on the slideshow, and then we can grab questions or talk giveaway.
That sounds awesome.
Whatever. Let's see where we're at. So unwind the thread from the spool to test the color against your quilt, and then when in doubt, choose the lighter color. If you have two fabrics that one dark, one light, go with something that's going to get along with the lighter color. Most times that's the case. And then here's our little tip for taking the thread over top of the spool when you have it mounted on your machine, and whether you're horizontal or vertical. If you have a machine that doesn't have an is not, it's just a vertical pin. Sometimes what folks do is they'll actually purchase one of those external thread holders, the ones that go like behind your machine. And then your thread can come straight up with the external thread holder. Did you see that?
Sneak peek, sneak peek.
Maybe a sneak peek of what's to come for the giveaway.
That's right. There you go. There you go.
I'm not sure we're there yet, but let's let me see. Shall we see if there's any questions? I mean, I can talk thread all day long, so I'm going to let you decide what we want to talk about next.
Wow, Karen, thank you. I mean, everything that you've shared so far is wonderful, and I'm sure that maybe some of us already knew some of that, and maybe some of us didn't. I know that I've already picked up a few wonderful tips from you, so thank you. And I'm sure many other makers who are watching us today have as well. Do we have any other questions?
Well, Erin's answered most of them in the chat, but one of them was if it's necessary to use beeswax or some kind of conditioner.
Do you recommend using beeswax or any type of conditioner with the thread as you're doing your hand sewing?
That's a great question. And you know, it's again a personal preference. I've found with Aurifil, with the 50 weight or the 80 weight when I'm doing handwork, that I don't have to use beeswax or a conditioner. It was common for me to do that back in the day, but I've just over the last, I think, shorter lengths of thread, knotting the last end cut, that makes a world of difference for how the thread behaves. So I personally haven't been using it in my handwork.
See, I'm too lazy to use it.
There's that too.
I'm just gonna keep cutting smaller pieces of thread.
Well, the fact of the matter is if you're not having trouble, then you don't really have a reason to use it.
Well, right. That's true. That too.
Yeah.
Right.
But there is nothing wrong with using it. One thing to point out, I guess, though, while we're on that topic, is that Aurifil thread, in one of those 15 production steps that I mentioned earlier, the Aurifil thread goes through a paraffin oil bath. So every length of thread actually gets soaked through this paraffin oil bath as it's going from the large spool, the roque, which I forgot to bring over to show you, and wound onto the spools that get delivered in the stores. So that paraffin oil bath, it strengthens the thread, it gives it just a slight bit more sheen, and it just makes it run through your machine and for your handwork beautifully. So I'd say, if you are having trouble, you could try a conditioner. If you're not having any trouble, no need to add the step.
Right. So Karen, for the EPP, which weight would you recommend? I know you've said it earlier, but you know, is there a range of weights, or would you say there's a specific weight that you would recommend overall?
Well, so there is a weight that's finer than 50 weight. I think generally, this is again one of those personal preference things, but I think what we see in industry is that most of the makers love to use the 50 weight for EPP because it's only 2-ply. It's not that thick. It's very thin, still, but yet strong. And I think most makers tend to lean in that direction. With that said, though, Aurifil does also have an 80 weight thread on a cherry wooden spool that I have used before for handwork. I use it for my needle turn applique, and I love it for that. I think what we find sometimes is different styles, different needles, different technique. People will kind of waffle between using the fine 80 weight thread or the Aurifil 50 weight thread. But I mean, I just love the 50 weight thread for EPP. And I think most of our designers and makers enjoy it as well. But don't lose track of the fact that that 80 weight is out there if you're doing some other hand work.
Right. Well, that's great. And then in terms of the machine sewing, I mean, what do you recommend there? Again, I understand it's a maker, you know, everybody has, just like Karen, you and I were talking about this before we came on. I mean, every maker has their own set of tools and their own techniques and, you know, their preferences through trial and error or experience, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, again, would you say that there's a range or very specific?
On the machine?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, since you brought, let's talk about machine and EPP. Is that what you're maybe where we're going? So one of the things I know you and I talked about before, Sharon, was that like when we talked about this beautiful quilt, I said, you know what, I love this quilt so much. I think I might want to do it, but I'm not sure between my other handwork and this handwork, I'm going to be able to fit in the handwork side, just the side of stitching the pieces together. So you can literally, there are many tutorials out there right now where you can stitch your English paper pieces together instead of by hand, the way Tula demonstrates so beautifully. You can use a machine, maybe like a zigzag stitch. The Aurifil 50 weight thread that comes, you know, in the neons and neutrals is perfect for that. I would put a brand new needle on, probably a size, maybe a 75, not a very big needle. Maybe a 75. It doesn't even have like a Microtech sharp might work well. Okay. It's like a sharp point. I would put a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine. I know this is like sacrilegious to be talking about doing a machine EPP, right? Right. But some of us are really lazy and maybe no, I shouldn't say that. It's maybe frugal with our time. Maybe I should say that. Well, our priorities are different than priorities. Right. Yeah, okay, never mind, scratch the other part. Where was I?
About doing the
in the
EPP on the machine. Yep.
A Microtech sharp, maybe size 75 or so. So a very fine needle with a sharp point, and brand new. And then Aurifil 50 weight in the bobbin. Okay. Any of the neon and neutral colors are beautiful. I generally try to get one that's gets along with a lot of different colors on top, kind of a neutral, a nice beige or a nice dove or a gray. And then with your neons and neutrals, 50 weights on top. Yeah. And then you put your zigzag stitch very narrow width, a very narrow width. You don't want a blanket stitch. Well, you still want it to be moving quite a bit as it goes. But if you can just nab a couple of threads of your EPP, you're going to lay them flat, right? Together like this. You're not going to have them like the two pieces like this, how you would normally whip stitch across the top of your EPP. You're going to actually have them laid out side by side. And you're going to feed them through your feed dogs. Use like an applique foot, one where you can see right into your needle, that zigzag stitch, very narrow zigzag stitch. But you want a little bit of movement in your zigzag, not a blanket. You don't want it to be like a buttonhole. Right, exactly. And then just real slowly, because what you don't want to do is nab that paper on the paper piece paper, because then you'll have trouble getting it out. So give it a try, play with it. I think I'm just actually going to play with it myself because it just looks like a lovely way for me, who is mostly on my machine, for me to finish it up. And 50 weight thread will melt in there once you get your settings right. I think the 50 weight will just melt right into that fabric. And it looks so beautiful. Karen, thank you for sharing that with us, because I just want to jump back a little bit. Because we've had makers, as we've been going through the series of talking about this Queen of Diamonds Block of the Month, have asked about doing this on the machine. So what Karen just spoke about is how you could do that if you wanted to. But I just also want to say that and remind everyone that, you know, when Chelsea designed this and her team, the EPP, as we all know, is traditionally done by hand. So this whole project is based around the handwork. We encourage that. But as Karen just said,
if you are somebody that would like to try it on the machine, we don't want to discourage you. It can be done. The technique is exactly the same in terms of preparation and getting it ready to sew, whether it be by hand or machine. It's just how you actually apply it when you're sewing. So therein lies the difference. All of the prep work is exactly the same, but now once you pull your needle and thread and start sewing by hand and or attempting it on the machine, it could be a new technique. And I know that some people do it. I've seen it out there, but it just depends. You may be, headstrong and say, there's no way I do it that way. And some of you might be out there clapping right now. So, it's up to you. It's up to you, however you want to do it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Everyone is different. So the way the kit comes and the way the book describes everything, I mean, it's still all exactly the same. It's just that final step of attaching your EPP pieces together that you can choose to do by hand or by machine. And maybe some of them are smaller and more delicate and you have time to do some by hand and you have a desire to do that. And then maybe you're, stuck at your sewing machine for whatever reason, you can't do handwork. Some people, maybe their hand dexterity just isn't there too.
Right. And it might be a nice solution, if you, whether it be for speed or whether it just be, it's a more comfortable experience for you.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Anyway, so I just wanted to talk about that because we did have a bunch of questions about that in a previous segment about, whether it could be done by machine. Again, it's not for us to say how you do it. Do it how you'd like. Right. Hold on. I'm going to ask Christy if there's any other questions.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's like, just very complimentary and they're, several people said that would help the arthritis.
Oh, so they like to hear about that. Okay. So a few people have said that with the arthritis, that doing it on the machine would be a great way to, make this quilt. So, hey, we encourage you to do so. So
do a little more work on that then. Have another session sometime, right?
Right.
They love seeing the knot.
They loved it. Your knot. Karen, there was something that we did also talk about. I'd just like to touch base on. You and I talked about it. Was I think if I'm remembering properly, you said something about the fold and the needle and the thread, and like when the thread folds over. Could you show us that quickly as well? And I think that maybe once you show that, we'll do the giveaway and we'll say goodbye.
Okay, great. Yep. Let me switch over to the overhead camera.
Okay.
And I'll mention this because I thank you for remembering that, Sharon. I completely lost that.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Yeah, we talked about the last time is when we're hand stitching, let me get this thread straight here. When we're hand stitching, generally, I know personally, I like to take the tail and make the tail longer so I don't have to worry about it coming out of the eye, right? So I don't have the tail of the thread just like an inch or two up here. I like to bring it way down, in this case, toward the end of the overall length. And that way I don't worry about that sliding out as I'm stitching. But one of the things that I also do, and I think is a great recommendation, is as you go along, you slide that fold along the eye there so that the fold isn't in the same spot all the time. That way it's not always getting beat up and taking the brunt of being pulled in that one spot through the fabric, the pieces, or whatever it is you're drawing it through. So that was that's kind of what we talked about, is move that knot, that fold along the eye of the needle intermittently, maybe every 5 stitches or 10 stitches, slide it to a different location so that particular spot isn't getting all the stress and wear and tear that we're going through. So
it gets worn out and then it's going to break and you've got the needle in your hand with no thread.
There you go. Yeah, so that's why Tula tells you to make sure you're also knotting occasionally, like especially at your corners. She encourages you to do that, not put a knot in things occasionally at your corner, so in case anything does happen, you know where your thread's going to go back to. You're not going to lose all that precious work that you did.
Right, exactly.
Can I say just one other thing before we get to the giveaway? And I'll try to keep this brief, but she's beautiful quilting. And I know she said it when we started, but my friend Teresa Silva, who Sharon already mentioned, did the quilting on both of the Queen of Diamonds quilts. And I knew it as soon as I saw it at market last year that it was Teresa's quilting, because she has this beautiful style about her. And when I got this in house, I texted her and I'm like, oh, it's even more beautiful in person than it is on all the images online. So I had to get that in there.
So Karen, I think that that's really nice that you were able to recognize, you saw the quilt. Did you know that she had done the quilting, or you just looked at it and was like, oh, that looks like Teresa's work?
So when at market in the last fall,
right.
When it was hanging in the booth, I was drawn to it. So I immediately went over to it, and it wasn't this, I don't think it was this quilt. I think it was the #1 quilt that it has, one that you have behind you that has like ribbon candy and the sashing. And as soon as I saw the ribbon candy and the sashing, I'm like, oh, that has to be Teresa. And then like inches away was the lovely little sign that said, who made it.
Wow, that's great.
And she has this beautiful style. I'm always telling people to check Teresa out, because if you're ever stuck for a design to put on your quilts, she always has some really fun stuff on her Quilting is My Bliss account. So
right. No, we've worked with Teresa, on and off throughout several years, and we always love it when #1, she has room for us. And #2, when, because I know she's got a very busy business and she usually always makes room for us, which we appreciate. But she does outstanding work. And a quilt like this was made for her to quilt, because, the quilting that she did in the sashing is pretty impressive. So
it's everything.
Yeah, she does a great job.
Yeah.
So, all right. So do you want to show that last slide of what you're giving away?
Sure,
so we have a giveaway, and I'll show what we're giving.
Yes.
Shortly. Yeah. Look at that. Karen gave you a little tease before of that. So the Tula Pink, the homemade collectible tin. So this isn't in production anymore. And this was many years. This was pre-COVID.
Very nice.
Right. I'm trying to even remember what year Tula did the homemade. I want to say it was like 2018. Do you know, Karen, what year you guys did this?
Oh, I don't, but Erin might be able to pop that right in the Facebook out there if she knows, but I don't know what
that's
year.
Okay. I'm just, this is
a lovely tin, isn't it? It has 4 large spool collection in there. And then the 10 small spool collection. And look at that one color that's in the large spool collection. That almost looks like it's going to go along really well with the other neons, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh, she said 2020 is the year for homemade. Okay.
There you go. Thank you, Erin.
Oh.
2020 was homemade.
Oh, wow. That's well, we were probably working on it in 2018, but
yeah. And time flies, right? When you're
right, exactly. So 2020 is when this came out. So anyway, so that's that. So Karen, I'm just going to switch screens. I think I'm going to put us both up.
Okay.
Okay, hold on 1 second here.
Did you want me to keep together the homemade?
Now I'm here, but I don't want it to just be me. So let me see how I figure this out. I think it's both of us now. So I think that we're both here. So now who's ever talking will be on the screen, just so that you know. So Karen just showed you, so Aurifil is going to be giving away that homemade collectible tin that Karen just showed you. And FreeSpirit is giving this wonderful stack of gorgeous fabrics. This is 32 pieces, and this is Everglow and Neons, which is shipping to stores now. It's shipping to your retailer now. So the question for today, if you want to win, and I know you do, send some hearts if you want to win. The question for today is, what year anniversary is Aurifil celebrating? And what year anniversary with Aurifil is Tula celebrating? So if you can answer that correctly, you will get that beautiful tin that Karen showed, and you will get this pack of fabric, which I know you want.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's a lovely pack of fabric, right?
It is.
And yeah. What happens when you have more than one person get that right? Do you just put them in a hat and draw them out?
No. So anyone that's on this live, they have to answer.
Okay.
And who I don't know. I think that what they do is they take a bunch of names, put them in a hat, and they make a drawing. So I am not the one that makes that selection, but somebody here at FreeSpirit will, and we will share whoever that is with you, Karen, so that we can get that mailed off to who the winner is. So I think that we've covered everything for today. I just want to make sure. I thank you, Karen. It's been a delight having you. I know that between the conversation we had prior to today, as well as today, I have walked away personally with a lot of information. I'm sure that, and I hope that those of you that are watching and have joined us today, we thank you for joining. We thank you for staying. We really appreciate that. Let us know if, in the comments as well. I know you want to win, but if you'd like to share what you did learn, we'd love to know that, because Karen, it was great. Little subtle hints that make the whole sewing experience better is always good. So thank you for that. And I just want to remind everybody that the Queen of Diamonds block of the month is about to start shipping very soon. We've been doing some video with by Annie as well, where she has been trying to prepare all of us to make bags to get everybody ready. We want you to be excited. We want you to start making, your bags and, preparing and prepping yourself so that, this year-long process of this block of the month is a very smooth process. So we're hoping that you're also watching those. By Annie, I know couldn't make it this week, but she'll be back next week, and we'll be doing that. That'll be the last time where she's wrapping up all of the bags that she had shown. So again, encourage you to do that. Karen, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Aurifil. I know that our designers here at FreeSpirit love working with all of you at Aurifil. You guys have come out with gorgeous threads over the years, and we at FreeSpirit love it. And I know that makers around the world love it. So thank you to you and everybody at Aurifil that do what you do to make our sewing experiences better as well. And I think that's it. So everybody just stay tuned. If you have any questions for us, let us know. We're excited. You see this gorgeous quilt, Karen, you're gonna have to say something for them to see the quilt behind you.
Is that working?
Yes.
Oh,
yep.
This beautiful quilt. Isn't it lovely?
Yep.
It's just so amazing.
Every
block is amazing. I could stare at it all day. I don't have to send it back, do I?
Oh, unfortunately, I think Chelsea's going to want it back.
Darn. Oh,
I know.
goodness.
And Christy is showing the fabric. Here, let me see if I can change the screen to Christy. Look at Christy's got a nice close-up of those fabrics. So we thank everyone for joining. Again, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody who, joined us today. We thank you for tuning in every week with us, and we're excited that you were here and stayed as long as you did. So thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody. And out for now with FreeSpirit Fabrics. And we're excited for you and the Queen of Diamonds that's coming soon.